Today, I must greet you with lot of hope and lot of confidence in you people. So, Assalamu alaikum. Have a good day. I'm sure all of us are thinking and rethinking, and I'll be so pleased to find out if my youth is rethinking that what we have been doing, and now when all these trying times is over, what we need to do. So today, under the polity, we are talking about in Indian ancient history, we'll talk of village democracy. The most fascinating of the political development of the classical age was the robust growth of village self-government in many parts of India. By the classical age, the village had supplanted the clan and tribes as the basic political unit, but political institutions retained several characteristics of the representative bodies of the old tribal republics. Villages in classical India varied considerably in size from a cluster of just a few huts in a jungle clearing sprawling habitats of 100 families in fertile plains. So their population also varied. While the larger villages had residents of different castes and tribes, there were also villages that were exclusive to a particular caste or trade, or even to a particular clan. The village organization, like the tribal organization, was essentially democratic, insofar as it could be democratic within the ambit of a caste society. The aspect of the village administration was particularly conspicuous in South India, where political institutions tended to be long enduring. And we can assume, or we should assume, that similar institutions once existed in North India too, but their records have been lost because of the sweep of migrations and invasions there, which also no doubt led to radical institutional changes there. Normally, villages functioned as autonomous, isolated units, but there was also a provision for setting up a tiered pyramidal structure of the representative bodies of a whole kingdom, with village assemblies sending delegates to talk to sub-district assemblies, and these in turn sending representatives to district assemblies to finally constitute the assembly of the whole kingdom, made up of representatives of all districts. Looks like Ayub Khan's basic democracy program. These were not regular bodies, but instituted for particular purpose as when the need arose, such as for raising funds to building or maintaining a temple, or to construct river embankments. Strangely, law books are silent about village institution, despite their vital role in polity. In later times, most of the Indian villages were administered by the panchayat, a council of 5 prominent villagers, including the headman, which in turn was responsible to the general assembly of the village, which met however or whenever necessary. These panchayats we still continue in our villages too. Large and prosperous villages had community halls where the assembly met, but in most villages it met under the shade of some big tree, where all the common activities of the village, including fairs, festivals and sports, were usually held. It is quite likely that the village organization in classical times was similar to this. The decisions of the panchayat had finality, as long as it remained within its jurisdiction. As a common Indian saying describes it, the voice of the panchayat is the voice of God. The panchayat usually functioned according to established conventions and handed down by a very long tradition but there is also inscriptional evidence, mainly from the Tamil country, of villagers adopting their constitution through formal legislative process. How good! And they laid down complex electoral, legislative and administrative procedures. Such formal procedures were mainly, perhaps solely, adopted by Brahman villages, Brahman mostly being literate. There is a good deal of information about Brahman villages and their composition, for they were usually set up by royal land grants. These elaborate, formal and democratic village constitutions are the epitome of the finest and most laudable aspect of classical Indian political tradition. The highest authority in the village was its General Assembly, which was constituted of the heads of all the village households. Women, slaves and hired laborers were not eligible to attend the assembly. Women are still not allowed in Panchayat. This was the body that maintained the records of the boundaries of the village and of individual holdings. The General Assembly was responsible for the execution and maintenance of the common projects of the village: irrigation, roadworks, temples, schools, public halls, rest houses, and so on, all civic amenities. To execute these projects, the assembly could levy taxes on villagers or exact labor from them on borrowed money, usually from temples. A very important responsibility of the village assembly was maintaining law and order and protecting the life and property of the people of the village. It had also created some judicial powers and could try and punish minor crimes like theft and moral offense like adultery and incest. In times of turmoil, the village assembly assumed military responsibility, and it was not able to protect the village by its own efforts. It sought the protection of some chieftain of the region in return for special payments. The village General Assembly usually met only once a year, and in large villages the assembly usually had a number of committees under it in charge of various departments, and several such committees are mentioned in inscriptions. Committees to oversee charities, irrigation works, garden, fields, temples, justice, ascetic, and so on. So this is really a people's responsible government, or the people responsible duties in a village. The perfected mode of decision making by the village bodies was by consensus, but where differences persisted, the decisions were taken by a majority vote. Particular care was taken by the village administration to prevent corruption by its officers. It was not in any case easy for village officers to abuse their power, for they functioned in the full view of everyone in the village. A 13th century South Indian inscription records the dismissal of a village accountant for cheating. I wish we could still do it. In one case, the village assembly was fined on a complaint from the local temple authorities about the assembly was misappropriating some of the revenues assigned to the temple. By far the most detailed account we have of village democracy and its administration in classical India is the early 10th century inscription on a temple wall in Uttar Meerut, a Brahman village about 85 kilometers south of Chennai. It is in South India then. The basic eligibility of a person to participate in full government was that he should be a permanent resident of the village and should be of sound mind and body, learned and of good character. We also wish that our representatives qualify to these merits. And the corrupt and their close relatives were specifically barred from participating in the village government, and also disqualified were those against whom incest or the first four of the five great sins, murder of a Brahman, drinking alcohol, theft, adultery, and associating with criminals was recorded. The inscription then goes on to specify the elections process in details, and the names of the candidates from each of the 30 wards of the village were written on tickets and bundled separately, each bundle with an identifying label. So they had a real good system. Like the villages, most of the towns in classical India also had a fair amount of autonomy, but the royal government intruded into them far more than into the village governments because of their greater economic and political importance. The governor of the town was a royal appointee, the king appointed him, but he was responsible for the collection of revenue and the maintenance of law and order. Sometimes there was two royal officers in the city, a civil and a military governor, to keep each other in check. Familiar it sounds. Despite such hazards, several provincial officers of the age did manage this balancing quite well. The classical exemplar of this was Chakrapalita, the Gupta governor of Girinagara, which is today is called Junagadh, in Gujarat, who extolled lavishly in a nearby rock inscription. Furthermore, the Chakrapalita was free from listlessness, arrogance, and was endowed with such noble qualities as fortitude and generosity, forbearance, masterfulness, modesty, prudent behavior, eloquence, self-restraint, liberality, high-spirited civility. So this is how every responsible person should be. Chakrapalita was obviously an exceptional public relations genius, but most city governors in Gupta times would have been careful to carry the townsmen with them. This was necessary for the governor, for the governor was not the sole authority in the city, but had to run the administration on the advice and assistance of a council made up of the heads of guilds and the leading families of the town. So there was a check on unlimited powers of any ruler, and they were bound to follow the advice of the people. The governor's powers were further curtailed by the fact that most of the routine administrative functions of the town were carried out by caste and guild councils.